Great to have you with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in my home studios, still kind of nursing my sore back. Anyone who has had back problems, you kind of understand where I'm coming from. But I will say I blame it on my cheerleading days. Way back in the day, I used to always be the base because I've been 5'11" since like 7th grade. I think so. I've always been the base, and so occasionally I go through these back issues, and so a little bit easier to sit in the chair at home than to try to navigate things back there at the studio. But I want to say thank you. Of course, Erica Jones is hanging out with us this week, along with Kelvin Brown. So give us a little bit of leeway. We have some new people on the show just kind of helping us along until Tyler comes back. He is on vacation this week, and hopefully he's enjoying his vacation and we haven't been bugging him too bad. How are you guys doing back there?
Oh, we're great. We're doing all righty.
Holding things down here, Ronnie. You know, now we don't have Tyler and we don't have you in the studio today, but we don't need to ask for a little bit of leeway. We got it down. We got it.
We'll nail it.
You're looking great. Look probably a little more comfortable than you feel, I'm assuming.
I will say, so this is a week into it, and so it's getting a little bit better because I do have a prescription that's kind of helping along the way. I'm wearing a back brace. I have my CBD roll-on oil and all that other good stuff, but I'm going to warn everyone at the top of the show. Trixie Dixie, the Wonder Dog, is with me this morning, and my husband is at the Lions, so he is working this morning because usually he'll kind of take her to the park. Sorry, the P-A-R-K. I don't want to say it out loud. She knows these words. Like if I say Papagino, she knows that word. So he'll usually take her while I'm doing the show from home to occupy her so you guys don't hear her in the background. But he has to work today, so you are going to probably hear quite a bit from Trixie Dixie, but I do have the secret weapon. These are special snacks. She doesn't get these.
Well, it looks like we have 4 of us on the show here today.
Yeah.
You, me, Calvin, and Trixie. We got the whole crew.
I know. She's laying here looking at me like, are you going to give me one of those? Right? Come here, Trix.
No, just teasing her?
So, yeah. Hey, but we do have a great show for you guys here. It's Hump Day. It's Hump Day. You know, I have to tell you guys, I kind of missed that commercial.
Hump Day.
I don't even know what the commercial was for, which is good. Oh, so here Trixie is. Remember that it's a Hump Day. What day is it? It's a Hump Day with Camel.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a Geico commercial. It was like a camel walking around the office going Hump Day.
Right.
Hump Day.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's funny. Kevin just walked in a minute ago, and he's like, how you guys doing? And I'm like, we're supposed to say we're great, what, right? And he's like, no, it's Wednesday. No one's great today. But, you know, it's Thursday Eve, which is then Friday Eve, and then it's the weekend. So it's all good. And like you said, we do have a great show here today. Yes, so a lot of good things happening.
Hey, with that, so since Trixie seems to be going into her barking mode, I think she heard the word camel and Hump Day. So I have these little, she knows this means sit.
Oh, I heard it.
Sit. Okay, good girl. So I did tell my husband, because she's a rescue, and her name, the only reason why she came to us, and Erica, you'll appreciate this, is her name was Miami on the rescue thing. And my husband went to the U of M. He worked in Miami for 18 years. And so, you know, Erica, it's all about the U. And so when I showed him, because, you know, we had another dog who sadly passed away, but we were thinking about getting her a brother or sister. So I'm out all these Facebook pages for all these rescue groups, and I was like, oh look, this dog's name is Miami. And she's calling me like, give me a treat. And so that's how Trixie came into our life. So but we renamed her Trixie. It was a big thing to come up with the name, and so it's kind of Trixie Dixie, but Miami is her middle name. So she's still at the core Miami, Erica.
I never knew that, but I love that. I love the lighter-hearted topic of dogs. Would love to talk about that for the entire 2 hours, but unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of rise in COVID cases. For a while, I think we all kind of thought we were really reaching an end of this. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm not saying there isn't. still hope, but now in our headlines today, we have reported that Michigan has the 5th highest child COVID cases in the country, just behind the states of California, Illinois, Florida, and Pennsylvania. So this is definitely crazy. And as we talk about vaccines, a lot of children either aren't getting the vaccines because they can't or because of different reasons, even those that are older and they can. Parents are still reserved. So there's a lot of reasons that this is taking place. But over the 2-week period, there was 110,380 child COVID cases. So these numbers are definitely very, very high. And, you know, I'm curious as to what this means for the future, the next couple of months, what we're expecting to see, because children can spread it to adults, and even if more adults are vaccinated and they're not going to have as bad of symptoms, maybe not end up hospitalized, it's still spreading rapidly. So Calvin, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel for the kids. Like, when the whole pandemic started, I was very worried. I was worried because most kids just usually get sick. Kids are always sick. They're running around getting sick, and they're always at school getting each other sick. And the first thing I thought of was, like, we're not going to have school for a while. And opening schools up, kids got to learn. But, like, the way we've opened them up might be a little too presumptuous that everything was all right, you know? And a lot of the kids that are getting sent into the school are, I'm not saying like anything against parents, but, you know, maybe are coming from unvaccinated families, or they're just coming in to get their kid out. Like, school is a form of daycare in a way as well. So, like, it's just another, like, school is just a place that everybody needs to put their kids, and with COVID going on, it's just not safe.
Yeah, I agree completely. And among states that are reporting, children are making up 11 to 19.9% of total accumulated state tests and 0 to 0.26% of all COVID deaths, which that I think is crazy, because another thing, and maybe this is a common misconception, people are like, well, it doesn't matter if kids get it because they're going to be fine anyway. And sure, the vast majority of kids will be fine and are not going to die from it, but then we do have this 0.26% that is dying from it. So that's something we need to take into account too. Just because the numbers are less doesn't mean it's non-existent. That doesn't mean there aren't kids being hospitalized because of it, and that is very scary. The threat is extremely real.
Yeah, and as a kid, like, that's the type of stuff that would scare the crap out of me. Like, I would... I feared every day that, like, I would go into school and someone would just be like, all right, we have to send everyone home. Someone caught COVID or something like that. Just some weird disease. Like, as a kid, that was something I was actually kind of, like, spooked about.
Yeah, and, you know, I think back to being a kid sometimes, and here in Michigan, snow days, they're the most exciting thing ever, and we love to not be in school. We look forward to having a snow day, but imagine having a year and a half of snow days. I think at that point, I would not... be okay with it. I would
want a year and a half of school.
Right, exactly. I would want a year and a half of school. So just such this pivotal time for kids, being able to just learning how to make friends and be social and be in these environments. And then we have these numbers on the rise, and it's so hard to hold the kids accountable, but they're the ones being affected by it. And again, not only them, but the rest of us are going to be affected by it too. And moving on, our next headline, all our headlines are really COVID related today, which is a little scary because, like I said, for a while it hasn't necessarily been that way, but Detroit 3 auto workers are needing to mask up again starting this Wednesday. So auto workers and staff at Detroit 3 plants in the United States must wear masks again, starting Wednesday. Becoming the latest high-profile business to restore COVID-19 restrictions. The nation's growing with the total threat of the Delta variant, and representatives from the union, General Motors, Ford, others, and the move is coming after Centers for the Disease Control and Prevention last week recommended that vaccinated individuals also wear masks in indoor public places where there's significant spread. And this raises another concern, because one of the biggest incentives for people getting the vaccine, especially among people who have been hesitant, is that they will not have to wear masks inside. So now they're saying, the CDC, that they still do have to wear masks inside. I'm not going to lie, I understand the frustration there. Of course, we want to keep everyone safe, but, as someone myself, I'm not going to lie, that was definitely one of my incentives for getting the vaccine, is not having to wear a mask anymore. So it's hard. I understand we need to keep people safe. If I was told that I need to come to work every day and wear a mask, I most definitely would. But then it's like, okay, we got these vaccines. Where does that put us? What do you think about that?
It's like it's a gamble because as the pandemic has gone on, it's just been getting more and more complacency to not wear your mask. And when you get the vaccine, you instantly just you want to take it off. But I just never, I don't know. For me, I always felt like I just wanted to, I'll wear the mask however long I need to. Like I said in the other Megacast yesterday, or I think 2 days ago, in Japan, people wear masks just as a common courtesy, just to not spread like regular viruses around. Like that's just like, I'd hate to get you sick with what I have.
Yeah, Kelvin, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
it's funny you say that. So this past year, I had a roommate at school from Vietnam, and when she first moved, we were, of course, just having general roommate conversations of how do you handle these different situations. And because I know where she's from, they weren't as concerned about COVID at the time. She basically told me it wasn't a threat there, but what she did tell me, she was like, it's crazy to me that people are upset about wearing masks here. We wear masks because it's a fashion statement. And to me, I was like, what? I mean, being a girl, I always got to make sure the mask matches the outfit, but I would never ever think of it as a fashion statement. So that's crazy. And a little back on track about Detroit 3 workers. So this CDC policy reversal, it's coming less than a month after Task Force did allow vaccinated employees to unmask for the first time since they returned to the plants, offices, other facilities following weeks-long of 2020 pandemic shutdown. So there's definitely a lot of mixed opinions here. And, you never know what's going to happen with more people striking. And it's just very, very hard. And we also have even Target, Walmart, Sam's Club. They've all said employees would begin wearing masks regardless of vaccination status. And Kroger's saying it strongly encourages individuals to wear masks at its facilities. And I always kind of think the ones that say strongly encourage, I always just feel like that's
necessary.
Yeah, it's more of a formality. Yeah. I think they just want to make themselves look better and not really enforce it. But yeah, also Detroit automakers and their largest union are joining some of America's biggest companies in reverting to the mandatory mask things, like I said, with these lower vaccination rates, because I think we're at a point where everyone who wants to get vaccinated has had the opportunity. So at this point, there aren't many reasons that people just aren't getting it if they're able to. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was actually, I was perusing through this article, and I actually noticed I noticed a really interesting bit right here. It says, while we know that, not right there, sorry. As a respectable UAW member, this is from Matt Horner, as a respectful UAW member, it is each of our responsibility to look after one another. This includes responsible mask wearing. And that, I like that sentiment where it's like, when you're in a workplace, you want to look out for everybody because, it's all about the lifeblood of everyone working there. And if you're vaccinated and you're wearing a mask, then you're protecting everyone else. If someone else isn't wearing a mask, they're not protecting everyone else. It's just about keeping the team safe. It's about cooperation.
Absolutely. And then moving on to our third and final headline we have this morning, again, COVID-related vaccines. New York City will require vaccination proof for indoor dining and gyms. New York City will soon require proof of COVID-19 vaccinations for anyone who wants to dine indoors at a restaurant, see performance, or go to the gym. This is the first big city in the United States to impose such restrictions. And this kind of makes me think of, we talk about just showing proof of the vaccine, so that's vaccine cards. But then we were talking yesterday about people crossing the border and showing fake vaccine cards, which crossing the border, you're not going to get away with that. Yeah. But I wonder if you're just going into a restaurant, how strict are they really going to be about making sure it's legit? Are people easily just going to be able to show fake vaccine cards? I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, and it'll be very interesting to see. What do you think?
I think that there's going to be an insanely large market for making fake vaccine cards. Like, I think that there's a large majority of people who are upset about how everything's going down, and they don't want to get vaccinated, and they have to find another way to get around it. And world's got liars in it. We wish everyone's truthful, but not everyone's truthful. And that's part of like why we wear masks. Like that, I think that's really what it comes down to. Is in the end, the mask or like the mask policy of wearing it while you have a vaccine, it isn't to like prove anything. It's just a unity, and having that counterfeit side is really dangerous. But it's gonna be there.
Yeah, I agree completely. And New York City's mayor announced last week that city employees would be required to get vaccinated by mid-September or to face weekly testing. And he's offered a $100 incentive for city residents. But, you know, even that, there are people, many people who would rather get tested twice a week than get the vaccine. And a $100 incentive, I don't know if that's going to do it for people. At this point, people who don't want to get vaccinated don't want to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Unless you're offering $1 million, it is going to take a lot at this point because, like I said, they've had the opportunity. But what this makes me think, if New York City is doing this, it's a big city. I wonder if other states are going to follow or if they're going to wait and see how this goes and then make decisions. But it just makes me think, what are things going to look like here in the next month? Because so many places, whether it be schools, restaurants, they've made plans, but every plan that we've made throughout the past year and a half, everyone has known it's
shaky,
not set in stone. You know, we're not penning everything in. It's all penciled in. So it's going to be very interesting to see what things look like, the conversations we'll be having. Even, you know, I say in a month, tomorrow. Who knows? We really never do. But we do have a great show ahead. Not as much talk about COVID, some more political stuff. Definitely a lot of good stuff, but we are going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we are going to kick off the top of our show with Dave Dulio.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com. Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
How does marijuana affect the teen brain?
Our brains are still developing into our 20s.
With regular use, marijuana can affect teen brain development.
It can affect our brain's circuitry and blood flow and impair thinking, learning, and memory function,
which could hold us back from reaching our potential.
Don't let marijuana mess with your brain.
Get the facts at michigan.gov/drug-free.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us here on the Wednesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. It's Hump Day. Here we are close to the weekend. As a reminder, you can always catch us Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can also listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff, and then If that's not enough, you don't live in the area, guess what? My friends and family, they actually watch us in Ohio. So you can catch us on Facebook as well as we live stream the show on our Facebook page and our social media as well. With that, things are heating up in the political arena. It really is a show to sit back and watch. And the person that you want in the seat next to you, giving you the popcorn and giving you the backstory, is our one and our only Dave Dulio, professor of political science and the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Great to have you with us again. Thanks you for taking time.
Nice to talk to you. It always seems like every time we talk, you say the same thing, that things are heating up. It just keeps getting hotter and hotter.
Because I will say, you think one thing can't top another, and it tops another. You're just like, is this the new norm here for our political scene?
Right. How many times have we said, I think I've seen it all, to only then turn around and see something else, right? That we don't expect.
I will say that, but we should kind of start out and talk about the passing of former Senator Levin, because he was such really a giant and an icon in the political world here in the state of Michigan. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet him?
I met him one time in passing when I was on Capitol Hill. It was for the briefest of moments, but it was a highlight, right? Because, as you said, he was a giant, not just here in Michigan politics, but nationally. He was somebody who had incredible respect in the United States Senate on both sides of the aisle for his seriousness, his commitment, and was really somebody who, when he retired, was missed by hundreds of people, thousands of people in the Senate for his approach, but also because of his length of service, the institutional memory that left the Senate when he left the Senate is sorely missed.
And I will say, I've had the opportunity as a reporter, you interviewed them multiple times, and he was always extremely gracious, and it didn't matter the situation. And he was always very gracious and took the time to talk with you. But I will say with him too, it's what you're talking about, that respect across the aisles. How would he do in today's environment? Because it was different. And we should note that he actually started in 1979. And the other thing, Fox 2, upon his passing, they did one of these look back stories. I didn't realize he was on the Detroit City Council.
Really something. His history here in Southeast Michigan is obviously deep and long. And I think the question of how he would do today, Carl Levin would do just fine in American politics today. It's everybody else that we have to worry about, right? And he would do just fine because of the kind of person that he was and the approach that he had. It's the other folks, the flamethrowers and the folks that want to just sort of light politics on fire these days. They're the ones that are are making it so that every time we talk, there's something else to talk about, right?
And, again, we're talking with Dave Dulio, professor of political science and director for the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. And we were really lucky to have him kind of be the face of Michigan and our advocate as well, because the one thing he did, he went after corporate America.
Absolutely. There was few people during his time in the Senate or in Congress generally who were as effective or as staunch a defender and supporter of his constituents.
So with that, can we talk a little bit? Yesterday was primaries. I was a little disappointed because we didn't have any issues here in our local area. For me, I'm just going to lay it out. I'm that voter. I want the sticker. But we didn't have anything here locally in the Keego Harbor area. But sitting where you sit, any surprises coming out of the primary? I think for me, Pontiac's going to be looking at a new mayor.
It seems like that is the case. That was not a surprising result. I think the big hurdle that the current mayor was facing was the fact that she had to run as a write-in candidate, and that's always difficult, let alone with relatively little time to prepare and mount a write-in campaign. So I think that was when that decision was made. It really did help and vault former state rep Tim Grimel really to the top of the list.
It's going to be interesting, and I will say I'm so interested because Pontiac is the back door to Keiko Harbor, and I think that's one thing with politics, hopefully coming out of COVID, that people are starting to pay attention to the hyper local.
Yeah, well, that's such a good point, because as you know, it's those local offices, it's the local politics that, when push comes to shove, are what really impact Americans' daily life the most. Yeah. The stuff that's happening in Washington or even in Lansing to some degree we're removed from that, and it really falls to the local elected officials for daily quality of life services that we come to depend on from city, municipal, local government. That's really where our bread is buttered, and it would be great if more folks would take an interest in and pay attention to their local politics. But frankly, based on voter turnout yesterday, that doesn't seem to be the case.
They really don't. And I will say, and this is an interview for another day, although this is our last interview because I'm done on Friday, but we'll talk about more of that on that later. But I will say the judicial side of the whole political arena has been fascinating to me, because it's so hard to get information about the people running for judges in our community or in our state, but they really do hold so much power. And we've seen that with Whitmer and the emergency orders.
Right, absolutely. And we have a very unique, that's a kind way of putting it, unique way of selecting our judges in Michigan, right? And where we elect all of them, except when there's a vacancy, then there's an appointment that fills that vacancy. But take the Supreme Court, for example, the Michigan Supreme Court. It is a nonpartisan office that is on election day, but the only way that you can get on the ballot for that nonpartisan office is through nomination by a political party. It's a screwy way that we do it that I think, frankly, leads to some increased cynicism about the court itself, right? Because when we read stories about it, we read or hear that it was a Republican nominated justice or a Democratic nominated justice, right? And I think that just injects that little bit of politics and partisanship into an office that I think everybody expects and demands is free of that politics.
And I will say, Dave, I don't know if you know this, but I worked for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And as a federal agency, I have witnessed the difference between going Democrat to Republican under Trump. And people who think that politics do not play a role in our law enforcement agencies, you are kidding yourself. Well, and it's sad. It really is sad. I was so disappointed.
It's a problem, right? I mean, and in an agency like ATF, right? That's another one that we would hope and expect would be free of that. But when we're talking about federal agencies like that with appointees that come and go with presidential administrations, we're fooling ourselves to think that politics doesn't enter into those decisions or staffing choices, et cetera.
Well, we're seeing that right now, even here in the state of Michigan with Whitmer, and you have Dana Nessel. the Attorney General, and you don't think that the two of them, come together to make those decisions? I'm telling you, as someone who's been behind the scenes, there is a lot of conversations going on before they go public with anything. But with that, though, can I ask you about your opinion, and how do you think COVID-19 is going to play in the upcoming elections? Because it seemed like for a while it may be in our rear view mirror, but now we're having the issue with the Delta COVID, or the Delta variant. And some states are going, you have to wear a mask now. Businesses are doing that here in the state of Michigan. However, Whitmer is taking a step back, and she's blaming it on the Republicans.
Well, I think that to answer the first part of that question, the COVID is going to be an issue. There's no doubt. The longer it sticks around in a way that is where it seems to dominate the headlines, the longer that's the case, the more important it's going to be come election day 2022. And that's hard to even fathom that we're 15 months or so away from that election. And I mean, everybody, there's not one person who doesn't hope that COVID is behind us by then, but it's going to be an issue with the way that those in office who are running for re-election, like the governor, the way that they have handled it until now, and the way that they handle things moving forward is going to be an issue that is brought up by their opponents. And I think maybe I am a cynic in many ways. And I think I've said this on your show, that I see politics everywhere. Politics is everywhere. And I think that if you just assume that, you're in a better spot to look at decisions that are made. And I think it's intriguing. I will not say that I know this for sure, because I'm not in those conversations, but it's intriguing to look at the way Governor Whitmer's handled the latest surge in cases with the Delta variant compared to what it was several months ago and this time last year. And it's not too hard to make a connection between a shift in strategy, it seems to me, at least thus far, a shift in strategy and connecting that with an upcoming campaign cycle.
I'm right in line with you, because I will say, when you talk about being a cynic, I'm the same way. And when people always ask, I don't know why people want to know what you are. I'm like, I'm an independent. I've been a journalist long enough to know that both sides of the system work the system. and if you don't buy into that, what are you doing? Like, I feel like 24-hour cable has been the downside of journalism, but that's a conversation for another day. Because I will say, one of the surprising things is when we're talking about Whitmer and we're talking about the state of Michigan, Betsy DeVos, does she have a chance here in the state of Michigan? She wasn't a well-liked appointee of Trump. How does she think she's going to run for governor?
Well, I've just heard rumblings, right? And there are rumors out there, and they're not even to the point where I don't think they're being taken as seriously as the rumors were about former Chief Craig when those rumors were out there. There seemed to be a lot more smoke around those rumors than there are about the former education secretary. But you're exactly right. I mean, she was in some respects enemy number one for not an enemy number one, enemy number two, because for the left in the Trump era, Trump was enemy number one. It still is, right? But
well, and he's basically going to say he's running for 2024. So
well, that'll be another shakeup, right? When in American politics, if that happens. But the former education secretary, well known, obviously, the name recognition off the charts in Michigan, given her family's history here, but was a constant target during her time as education secretary, and frankly remains a target for many on the left. And I think that would make it a really an uphill battle for her not only to win in a general, but to secure the Republican nomination. I think Republicans at some point will become pragmatic about their primary and say, okay, are we going to fight amongst ourselves? Are we going to violate that Reagan rule of never speak ill of another Republican? Or are we going to try to focus on the end prize, right, which is retaking the governor's mansion? And
I will say, if she's looking for a place to offload a few $1 million instead of doing a campaign, I'll take some of your money. I can think of a lot of causes that can use that money. But with that way, because we're kind of talking about, we know there's been a division within the Republican Party. I think what's going to be interesting is to sit back on the Democratic side and the bombshell that came out yesterday out of New York with Cuomo.
Right. There's so many aspects of that are interesting, fascinating, important, whatever moniker you want to put on it. But it is bombshell is, I think, is often an overused term, but it's appropriate in this case. The number of allegations, the strength of the report from a Democratic Attorney General in New York, the statement from the president, another Democrat, right, calling on the governor to resign, saying that he should resign. This is obviously critical time for Governor Cuomo. How he handles this in the next couple of days is going to be really interesting to watch. Now, he seems to say he's not going to resign. It is, I think, hard to see how he survives this, both with we're still in the Me Too era. Yep. And there are also, it seems, possible criminal charges coming from this that might give the state legislature a bit more ammunition to go after him on an impeachment inquiry. Although we've seen another Democratic governor embroiled in scandal simply dig his heels in and survive it. Ralph Northam in Virginia, with not just accusations, but admission of appearing in racist garb, is still the governor of Virginia. And that seemed impossible right when those stories were breaking. But he dug his heels in, said, I'm not resigning, and he's still there, in part because it seems like a lot of people forgot about it. He said, I'm not resigning, and people just moved on, right?
I moved on. I will say, I remember that, and I was thinking, there's no way, especially in the climate
right.
that we were in at the time. And we should note that climate plays a lot about how they really survive some of these scandals. And with that, though, we only have another minute or two with you here on the Megacast. But if I can ask you, it's really sobering to me to think that we are coming up on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And I remember where I was that day. Where were you?
I was in Washington. My wife and I lived there at the time. She worked 4 blocks from the White House, and it was scary. I was on campus in graduate school. She was working downtown. It took her hours to get out of the city. It took us hours to get home from there, just across the river in Virginia. We could see the smoke from the Pentagon, from the rooftop of our apartment building. I get the chills just now talking about it. But it is 20 years. It's a long time. And I think I know where you're going with this. We're gonna have an event on campus on September 9th to remember 9/11, to talk about issues related to 9/11 with Congresswoman Slotkin, who was impacted in her career by the terrorist attacks. She was recruited into the CIA not long after that. She's going to be joined by former Congressman Mike Rogers, who also represented Oakland County during his time in Congress. He was in Congress on 9/11, went on to become chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and is a true expert in that arena. So they're going to come together to talk about issues related to 9/11, which is really important for us on a college campus because more than half of our students weren't even born.
Wow.
Which is, it makes me feel old, but it really shook me, that realization that so many young people today did not grow up with that as a memory or as or knowing about it in ways that you and I do.
But with that as well, it's what I remember about 9/11. Once we got past the day, was the eeriness of the skies being silent because no planes were flying, but then the unity of our entire country. Why can we not get back there?
Well, that's a great question. And we did have that for sure. But I think if we look back on it, honestly, it eroded pretty quickly. And, you know, there was a big rally around the flag effect, which we see we saw in President Bush's approval rating at the time. It went up to 90%. And then it eroded pretty quickly after that. So the country can come together. It's about keeping it together.
Dave Dulio with us here, professor of political science and the director for the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. Dave, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for always taking time to speak with us here on the Megacast. But I've learned so much talking with you. And one day I'm going to sit in on one of your classes.
Well, Ronnie,
do you accept old people?
We call those folks non-traditional students. So absolutely. But Ronnie, thank you always for the opportunities. It's been great talking to you. I wish you nothing but the best as you move forward in your career.
Thank you so much. And again, Dave Dulio, Oakland University, any college student out there, you would be so lucky to have him as a professor, always engaging. So thank you again. I've learned so much talking to you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And keeping on the topic of politics, when we come back here on the Oakland County Megacast, we're going to be joined by Representative Brenda Lawrence next here on the Megacast.
To Sophia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around. And I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
We want to say thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday to be with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in my home studios, nursing my sore back, which is AKA I'm getting old. Erica Jones and Calvin Brown are holding things down back at the studio while Tyler takes some much well-deserved vacation time. So we want to say thank you to them. As we continue the conversation, we'll stay on the topic of politics, and it has been a crazy year. I will say though, I was a little disappointed, and when you go into your Facebook and you pull up the memories, I had the Facebook memories of voting in the primaries. Well, we didn't have any issues here in our local community, and I was a little sad because I love voting. With that, let's bring in our Representative Brenda Lawrence. Of course, she represents the 14th Congressional District. Always great having you with us. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, but is it weird that I actually took one of my stickers that said I voted when I didn't, but we didn't have anything to vote on in my community?
Well, you know, it's always a risk, because when there's not a lot going on, the next cycle, when there is, people are kind of like, oh, am I supposed to vote? They're not. We need, I don't know, need to keep something to keep people in that program of voting.
So with that, can I ask you, as someone who's been an elected leader for a long time, how do you get people excited about the primary? Because I feel like so much focus is on the general election.
Yes. So a few people understand, especially when there's multiple candidates, that you have to be in the top two to be able to be on the ballot for the primary. And if you're running in a crowded race, you have to like knock on doors, get people excited about you being there. Say, if you don't vote for me, you won't be able to elect me in November. And so you have to do a lot of educating. You have to be in the public and really engage them. You have to use the tools of social media, of mailings, and have signs out in the community to make people aware when they drive by, say, oh, there's an election coming up.
So we know here locally, the city of Pontiac, it appears that they are going to have a new mayor, because we know there was an issue with the current mayor with Waterman, and she did not make the primary.
Yes.
And with that too, I know she was even trying to get people to make sure that they spelled her name correctly. But I remember that with Duggan. Back in the city of Detroit, him trying to get on the ballot as well. What's the behind the scenes action that's going on leading up to these elections?
Well, behind the scenes, you're trying to, when there's like multiple candidates like there were in Pontiac, you're trying to rise above all of those candidates. So you are trying to highlight why a person should vote for you. And unfortunately, sometimes why you shouldn't vote for another candidate, which they call negative campaigning. Unfortunately, sometimes the contrast, you need to present it so that people can say, oh yeah, these are the skills I want. This is not the candidate I want. But behind the scenes is, it's that magic number. How many votes do I need to win? And you go after those votes. Like if I need 5,000 people to vote for me, I'm going to mail, I'm going to target, I'm going to find the people. You're making phone calls. Will you vote for me? If that person says yes, then you're going to mail to them, lock them down, and make sure that they show up for you on election day.
And that's what's so hard, especially in the primaries.
Yes.
Because people don't typically show up. But I will say, like yesterday, the weather was beautiful. There was no reason to show up in the primary, but people just don't.
Well, let me tell you a funny story. I was in the grocery store one time, and this lady said, I'm going to vote for you. I said, the election was yesterday. Oh, I didn't know. Thank God I won. But can you imagine? And she was all enthusiastic. I'm going to vote for you. I said, the election was yesterday. Oh, I didn't know.
And what's so sad about that is that we have had, situations where, elections and positions have been decided by just those few votes.
Yes, just a few votes. Yes.
Your vote does matter. But the good thing with that, though, we know that you are in position and you have been such an advocate for the people of Michigan. But if I can talk to you a little bit, because I do follow you on Twitter. I love your social media. Thank you. But as a female and as a woman, let's talk about the Paycheck Fairness Act. Why are we still having this conversation in 2021?
And that is the frustrating part of being in a position of elected by the people to get things done. And there are still members of Congress who don't see the big deal. They don't understand. They say a woman can get any job she wants. Why do we need to pass a law to ensure paycheck fairness, where data, research, analysis have documented that women traditionally get paid a different and lower salary than men. Some like to say, well, that's because the men have been there longer and have seniority. That's absolutely not true. Because we know the equalizer are our unions and labor groups, because they mandate that if you have a certain job classification, you get paid the same. And the only difference is seniority. So you're in track, and you will eventually, when you reach a certain amount of seniority, make the same amount of money. But the criminal part of why this bill is so important, do you realize that a woman who, say for instance, is a engineer in a firm, and she gets paid less, when she retires, till her death, her payments is less than a man. So a man, all of our retirement is based on your income while you work. So when you're working, if you're making less, what a slap in the face. I'm retired and I'm trying to live on a fixed income, but my quality of life is not equal to a man because he made more when he worked than I did. So I'm still at a lower salary.
And, as a federal employee, the one thing about the system there is it's based on your rank, like GS 12, GS 10, and you get that. And then, so they can't monkey with your pay. But I will say, coming from media, the big thing in corporate America, you have to keep your pay a secret.
Yes, and it's required. And we have actually addressed legislation, because when you come in, and we know this, in your field, we even had some examples where a reporter or a broadcast analyst will come in and they'll say, well, they'll learn by just happenstance. Oh my God, he's making that much money. I'm doing the same job he is. But you're not supposed to know that. And so how do you appeal that? And so we have, it's all over the place, and it's really needs to change.
Representative Brenda Lawrence with us here on the Megacast. Of course, she represents the 14th Congressional District. And if I can ask you, you had posted something regarding it was the minibus?
Yes.
What exactly was that? And I did go on and I saw your 8 communities, but I didn't understand the terminology of the minibus. Can you explain it to us?
So in the budgetary process, there are some times where we'll put multiple bills, appropriation bills, under one, and we label it the minibus. So think about a bus has multiple passengers. So you have multiple bills. And what we did, we enacted community project funding. And so every district, and I represent the 14th, and if I could just go, that's all the Grosse Points, Harper Woods, Heart of Detroit, Hamtramck, Rollo Township, Oak Park, Southfield, Farmington Hills, West Bloomfield, Kego Harbor, Orchard Lake, Sylvan Lake, Pontiac, and Lathrop Village.
Talk about a diverse group to try to represent.
Think about the diversity in that. And so for my district, I asked every city to give me a project, and then I submitted. And what was so good about this is new, is that I can bring money directly into the communities. And if I could just name some, there's a veterans, Hamtramck, you saw it on the news, most of you yesterday. There's only 5 of the Negro League stadiums left in the country. And we are so blessed. We have one of those in Hamtramck. I was able to get funding for the renovation of that.
And thank you for doing that, because we've had them on the show and it's amazing.
Amazing. I mean, it was very moving to be there, to know that we are going to be part of restoring and preserving history. The Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, we were able to purchase a cataract catheterization technology. We were able to give money to the Holocaust Museum for educational programs. The Molina Oakland Health Hospital, we were able to purchase another medical machine. The Pontiac water system, we were able to get $800,000 for water improvement, and Rollo Township for their water improvement system, 8,000. And then there's something called the Accelerator in Southfield with those partners with LTU. We were able to program that. And lastly, we were able to promote a small business accelerator in Detroit called Detroit Mean Business. So these are projects throughout the district that's going to make a difference for our business community, for water, for health, for history. So I'm really proud of our minibus.
I love that. And Congresswoman, I have to say, I know that our time is tight with you, but if I can ask you, we lost a political giant recently here in the state of Michigan, and the passing of the former Senator Levin. Any memories you want to share with him?
Yes, I just want to say a prime example of a statesman, a person who believed in bipartisan work, who understood compromise, who was not afraid to debate an issue with dignity and respect. I feel that's lost a lot now in our politics. And just knowing that his love of family with his brother was just remarkable, even in politics. So we did lose an excellent role model for political leaders.
Like I've been able to interview him multiple times, but when you think about it, it's not just him, but he has such a legacy in his family as well. And in fostering public service to generations to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. And his name will be brought up on the number of legislation and accomplishments that we made in Congress. And we really did lose one of our political giants.
Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence here with us here on the Megacast. Of course, she represents the 14th Congressional District. We so appreciate your time. Anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to add before we say goodbye? I know that I'm already above your my cutoff time, so I apologize.
Well, I just wanted to say Godspeed to you and all your future endeavors. I thank you so much for your professionalism, for you providing information on this Megacast, and look forward to seeing your sails in different waters and as we move on.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. And we always appreciate your time as well here on the show. With that, we're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. Still a lot to get to in the second hour of the show.
Take care.
The COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get vaccinated?
I'd like to go to these school dances and spring break to have fun.
I want to be in person for college next semester.
I want to get out of this pandemic.
I wanted to protect the people around me.
Why did you get vaccinated?
Because I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my friends.
I just want to go to a show, dance around, not have to worry about anything, feel like I'm free again.
So we can not miss out on the best years of our life.
Great to have you with us here on the Wednesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in my home studios because I'm getting old. I'm nursing a bad back, and it started a week ago, but things are starting to get better. But it's a lot more comfortable sitting in my chair here and not driving to the studios because, as many of you know, that our parking lot is under construction, so you're having to park far away and try to walk in. to the studio, which is great when you're able. But when you have a bad back, it makes for a slow walk and a very painful walk as well. As always, though, we want to remind you, you can always catch us on Birmingham Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Listen to us on the radio. We make it easy for you. 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. You can also catch us on Comcast, channel 15, AT&T, channel 19. We want to say thank you to the cable subscribers because a portion of your subscription goes to supporting programming such as this. And then, of course, you can always catch us on social media as well. For so many of us, though, we have to recognize that we've been extremely blessed here in Keego Harbor with the flooding situation. It's not always been the case, but we know that in our neighboring communities, we have been continuing to deal with these wicked weather storms that have been rolling through the state of Michigan over the past few weeks. But when it comes to insurance and trying to deal with the damage and getting the damage fixed, it can be a little bit of a nightmare. You have to educate yourself when it comes to the insurance companies. And that's why we're bringing in Emily Bourne. She's the president for the agency, a division of the Meadowbrook Insurance Agency. Emily, great to have you with us. How are you?
I'm good, Ronnie. Thanks for having me today. And I'm glad to hear your back's feeling better. You make a great case for why insurance is important.
I know, right? Right. And it is the Kleinschmidt Agency, right?
Correct. Just Kleinschmidt Insurance.
With that, can I ask you, because unfortunately, when you become a homeowner, these are some of the things that you don't really think about. We've had water issues here in my house, thankfully not from flooding, but when calling in a claim, wording matters. What do you tell your clients?
That is correct. So I too actually experienced some water damage in my own household. And it's funny because we counsel our clients on what to do to be prepared for this event, what to do in response to this happening in their own home. And I found myself, halfway through the cleanup process, and I thought, I'm not even following my own advice here. So it is a very frustrating situation. And so while there's not really, any specific wording, there's not a whole lot of coaching that we can do with our clients. We just caution everyone, when you have a water event, where the water comes from is very important. A lot of public officials are using the term flood versus water backup, and those are two totally separate policies. So it is pretty important when you're filing a claim and talking to your agent about the source of the water damage.
So with that, Emily, I have to tell you right there, those words mean so much. And so when you're talking to your clients, how do you try to tell them, because you're on the front end as well and trying to sell them the insurance, and how do they know what's different? Because we all just say flood. It's flood. No, don't say those words.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you do want to, it's very important on how you're going to have this conversation. So when we're talking about water backup, that's water that originates up from the drain, from inside of your home, versus a flood, which is more water encroaching from the outside walls and windows into the home.
So with that, because I just learned something right there, how do you educate your clients in that? Because when someone's calling in a claim, they may not know, and they're just saying what they think. Oh, it's flooded. What do I do?
So there's a few things that we do recommend if you've had one of these events, in response. One of the things that we recommend first, take photos of the water damage as it's occurring, at its worst, to provide to the insurance claims adjuster. You're going to want to take any necessary steps to prevent further damage, not to be confused with making the repairs yourself, because that can actually make matters worse, or kind of cover up any damage that might have existed before. So, take necessary steps to prevent further damage. a really good example of this would be shutting the water off, or in cases where a tree may have fallen on the property, or on the roof, put a tarp over the roof. That would prevent further water from coming in, but wouldn't necessarily repair the hole that's left in the roof. And then finally, discuss the damage with your agent before filing the claim. Sometimes it makes sense to file the claim. That's what insurance is there for. And other times, it's more of a long-term rate preservation strategy to, maybe you have a $500 deductible and you have $750 worth of damage. Does it make sense to file that claim and get a surcharge for the next few years and pay potentially more than that $250 versus just paying the $750 out of pocket? I know that's a lot of math, but those are the types of conversations that we have with our clients prior to filing the claim, so that ultimately they are making that decision with all of the information needed in order to make the best decision for their household long term.
Okay, Emily, I'm telling you right now, if I didn't have USAA right now, I'd be hiring you or going with you, because you just talked magic in the last minute. And these are things that people don't understand because you're in an emergency. So they don't really know how to respond, and they don't understand that the words that they say can impact their future, relationship with the insurance company. Because as someone who has covered so many floods in Detroit, you had people who were paying out of pocket because they were afraid that they were going to lose their insurance.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for sure. And, our job as an independent agency is to just counsel our clients, give them the best information on what the coverage means, how it plays out. We don't make a strong case for or against any type of coverage. Our job is primarily just to educate them on the pros and cons of selecting any particular item. And, that's what risk management is all about. So it sometimes it works out in your favor, and sometimes it's like, oh man, hindsight is 20/20, but that's, it's not always the most exciting work, in the insurance industry, but it is very important work. And so we really make it a point here to try and do that for our clients.
Words matter. And so with that, Emily, can I ask you, is it okay to call up your agent, especially someone that you have a good relationship with, to talk to them about the situation and not go on record yet? How does that work in the insurance world?
That's a tough question.
Should I file a claim? Should I, or I guess not on record, because I'm thinking media, but is it okay for me to call up my insurance agent, especially someone if I know, and say, this is my situation. Can you advise me on how to go further?
Yes, actually, that's our preferred method of going through this process, because it does allow for that conversation, and it does allow opportunities to kind of coach and guide and educate our clients on that. So that's not, there's no fear there. Now if somebody were to say, hey, a car ran into the side of my house and I'm missing half of the wall, should I or shouldn't I file a claim? I mean, there's a little bit of a duty to report that on our end. But if it's just, the small nuances in and out, where it could go either way, we like to leave that. In fact, we make it a point to leave that decision to our clients. We don't make that decision for them.
And that's really kind of where these relationships come in, by going with a smaller agency such as yours. Again, we're talking with Emily Bourne. She's the president of the Kleinschmidt Agency, a division of the Meadowbrook Insurance Agency. And we're hearing so much lately about FEMA coming into some of these areas that have been hit hardest by the flooding recently. How does that play into the overall personal insurance arena?
Well, FEMA is sort of a last resort, and they're also sort of they're unpredictable, right? There's no guarantee, there's no real system in place to decide who would get FEMA relief funds. It's sort of up to state and city and local officials on how they're going to distribute that in the event that they make a federal plea and it's granted, right? So, the safest bet is to purchase that insurance policy so that you get total control over whether or not you're able to repair your home.
And can we talk a little bit about the insurance policy and buying your insurance? Because I think a lot of people don't understand the clarification between flood and sewage backup.
Correct. So when you are going through, there's a really quick litmus test, and it goes a little like this. Have you added any square footage to your home or done any remodeling projects recently? Have you purchased any high valued items or inherited any collectibles or fine arts? Have you started a home business? Have you considered what you would do watching all of this unfold on the news? Have you asked yourself, wow, what would I do in that situation? So if the answer to any of those questions is yes, first call you should make after wrapping up this podcast is going to be to your agent. It's important to familiarize yourself with your coverages and that you have now, but not just what you have now, but also what options have become available since you last had that conversation with them. There's a lot of new options out on the market. Not every company offers them, but as the consumer, you would be doing your due diligence if you had that conversation and asked your agent and at least knew, hey, this isn't available to me, or it is, and this is how much it costs. I'm going to make the decision on whether or not I want to purchase that and protect myself.
I'm sitting here, Emily, and I'm going, yes, yes, and yes. And you really simplify things for so many people. So when you're in that moment, because people just panic, how should they first react? What are the first things that someone should do when they're suffering from water damage? And we'll talk about the floods because, this has been crazy. My dear friends over at the Church of Messiah in downtown Detroit, well, the east side of Detroit, they were hit 3 times within a month. And it's just so hard for them to recover. But we also know at some point in time, some of the people in certain areas don't want to report the damage to their insurance agency, because it's going to make their insurance premiums jump, or maybe even the potential of being dropped.
That's a great question. So here's my Cliff's Notes summary of that answer. Insurance is one of the few things that we purchase throughout our lives in hopes of never having to use it, right? So with that said, when those instances happen, unfortunately, because it's more of a matter of when, not if. So when those instances happen, the worst possible case or situation that anybody could find themselves in is to have paid for a policy that goes, it just barely gets to where they need it to cover them for years, only to find out that, hey, there's actually no coverage on your policy for this specific situation. So while it does cost a little bit more, while there's a little bit of hesitance there, the best method to move forward is going to be to try and price out that policy. And honestly, it's, if you break down the cost of a homeowner's policy on average in the state of Michigan, it's less than a cup of coffee a day. So and that's not to, downplay any financial hardships or anything. It's just in comparison, it is an affordable purchase. It's a good investment to protect your assets on the back end if this does happen.
So Emily, if I can ask you, when it comes to that, when does an individual know that they should report it to their insurance company versus when they should not? And is it harder to get some of the insurance in certain areas rather than others?
It's not harder to get insurance in certain areas according to others, but they do go, they use several factors when determining a rate. One of those is going to be what territory you're in. And it's not necessarily where you're at, but the amount of loss in any given area for any particular insurance provider. So they're not really, you know, this has nothing to do with location. When you're reporting a claim, that's why we recommend contacting your agent and having that conversation. They can guide you through the process before you even get to the claim filing point.
Emily Bourne with us here on the Megacast. She's the president for Kleinschmidt Agency, which is a division of the Meadowbrook Insurance Agency. I've learned so much already. And I will tell you, we've had a couple water issues in my house, but I'm going to knock on wood. Not real wood. I need real wood. So to make sure that it doesn't happen again, because it's been a nightmare to go through. But I will say, Emily, with that, how should someone base their policy? What questions should they ask an insurance agent? Because I think a lot of times people are just kind of fuzzy on some of the gray lines when it comes to their policy.
Yeah, and that's a good question. And the short answer is their agent should be asking them the questions. Okay, so that's we're the professionals, we kind of do this for a living. And so we kind of understand where problem areas might arise. It's important to ask those probing questions to get to the root answer, because not everyone understands the coverages that are available, new items that have come on the market in the last 5 to 10 years. And there are a lot of clients and a lot of consumers out there where it's been a long time since they've even heard from their agent. With the coronavirus and remote work, things got a little hairy last year with no fault reform, and we were pretty busy here. So, we made it a point to reach out to our clientele, but we also got a lot of phone calls that said, hey, I can't get a hold of my agent. And so that's the responsibility of your agent, is to ask those questions and coach you on those options and ultimately let you make that decision.
You bring up so many good points. We'd love to have you on again if you want to talk about the no-fault insurance and the changes in that, because that is like fuzzy area for me. But when we're talking about this as well, can you tell us a little bit more about your agency and how can people contact you if they want to make a change? Because one of the things I do think which happens, and I will admit, I am so guilty of this, is I just renew my policy every year. And I don't think about looking at the policy and updating it.
Sure. Well, if anybody wants to have a deeper discussion, they can contact our agency main line here in Ann Arbor, is 734-662-3100, or they can visit us on the web at kleinschmidtinsurance.com. Spelling is right there. So it's just www.kleinschmidtinsurance.com, and they can reach out and we'll get them in contact with one of our experts.
Emily, I've learned so much, but is there anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to add before we say goodbye?
My only plea to your viewing audience at this point is, it's hard to react in a situation after the damage is done. So the best case scenario, the best thing you can do for yourself is to be prepared ahead of time. I advocate that every single person should have a home inventory. They should compile a home inventory with receipts, photos, values of items in each room. They can do this in paper format. There are apps out there just with a simple Google search. It is very helpful. It helps you understand your potential loss and your insurance needs if there are any gaps when you're looking at your policy. And it's also nice in those moments of panic to say, I know exactly what I lost. And in fact, I can export it and email it to you in, an hour and a half. So that is my final plea to your viewers, is that is a very handy tool, and we recommend that for everybody.
That's a great tool. I will say my husband has a comic book collection, and I bought him a computer just to log all of his comic books so we can get insurance on it. So you are so wise. It's been great talking to you. I so appreciate your advice and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Ronnie, and we'd be happy to be back anytime.
Great. Thank you again. Emily
Thanks.
Bourne with us, President Kleinschmidt Agency, a division of Meadowbrook Insurance Agency. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. Still a lot to get to and the remainder of the show. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
How does marijuana affect the teen brain?
Our brains are still developing into our 20s.
With regular use, marijuana can affect teen brain development.
It can affect our brain's circuitry and blood flow and impair thinking, learning, and memory function.
Which could hold us back from reaching our potential.
Don't let marijuana mess with your brain.
Get the facts at michigan.gov/drug-free.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Trevor Project is sharing how you can support LGBTQ youth who may be at risk.
It's simple. Just show them that you care. C-A-R-E. Connect. If you noticed any warning signs of suicide from someone you know, reach out to them.
Ask. Ask directly, are you thinking about killing yourself? It might be challenging, but talking about suicide is proven to reduce risk.
Respond. If they open up to you about their suicidal ideation, honor that trust by responding with compassion and empathy.
Empower. Talking openly is a great first step, but now you can empower them with the information and the support they need to improve their situation.
Learn more about how you can show them you care and help prevent LGBTQ youth suicide. Visit trvr.org/care.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Erica Jones here in our studios with Calvin Brown, and of course we have Ronnie Dahl at her home studios today. You're watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, and we were talking about politics and now back into COVID. As we have discussed, numbers are on the rise again, and that is forcing people to make new policies and impose new restrictions, or in this case, mandates. And the University of Michigan, as we've discussed, is now requiring COVID-19 vaccinations among all students and faculty on campuses. So, to talk more about this, we are now joined by Dr. Anna Kirkland, who is a professor of health management and policy at the University of Michigan. So good morning, Dr. Kirkland. How are you today?
Hi, thanks. It's great to be with you.
So let's dive right into it. We have this new policy from the University of Michigan where students and faculty at all campuses must submit information that they have been vaccinated by August 30th. So first and foremost, what are your initial thoughts on this policy?
I'm really pleased to see it. I was one of the signatories to the faculty petition to request this earlier in the summer. We got 700 faculty on that. I think it is a very reasonable effort. It's a very reasonable requirement in the context we're in. Because if you think about colleges and universities, you know, it's a different kind of environment. It's a special environment. The students and faculty and staff, I should say staff are also covered as well, because we have thousands of staff members who all work very closely with us. So, you know, we've got big lecture halls with hundreds of students. We've got communal living. We have marching band. We have studios. We have research labs. We've got lots of, the rec facilities, kids are working out, panting next to each other in those spaces. And we need to use all those spaces and do all those activities in pretty close contact with each other to fulfill our educational mission. So I think it's a very good policy. It's very reasonable. We're with MSU and over 500 other colleges and universities around the country. And I think we're going to see a lot more adding mandates as well. And there are exceptions. There's a religious and medical exception policy as well.
So the one thing that is a little bit making me scratch my head about this policy is that it wasn't announced until July 30th, and I have here that by August 30th, students need to be vaccinated. But some of these vaccines, you're supposed to wait 3-4 weeks in between each one. So my only, not reservation, but confusion, I guess you could say, is just the time frame does seem a little bit short on this, just a little last minute. Is there a reason that this wasn't mandated at the beginning of the summer to maybe give students more time? And with that, is there going to be a little bit of leniency just on timeline because it was short notice?
Well, I'm not privy to any inside information on when they made the decision and why. I suspect it was because the Delta variant spread, as you know, back in June. Now we're looking back at June as this low point where everyone was taking their masks off and thinking everything was going to be great, or at least I was much more optimistic then. And I think the evidence we're seeing about the Delta variant and its greater contagiousness has been really troubling. And I think a lot of the policy change comes from that. That was a little bit more recent. Now, it is true that if you're just now getting your first dose, you'll be able to tell that, report that to the university that you're not quite vaccinated yet, but that you're complying, and that's all going to be fine. That's part of the policy. We also have many, many international students coming back from countries maybe where the vaccine just isn't available. There's also provisions for them, to be able to come back and begin the process of getting vaccinated as soon as they get back to Ann Arbor, which might be August 30th or something. So the policy accommodates all of that.
So let's say I don't have a religious or health reason not to get the vaccine. I just decide I don't want to. What are the consequences? Am I not allowed to come back to campus if I have not received it or have not given information as to why I haven't received it by August 30th?
Well, the policy is a little vague on that. They may still be figuring out what to do. Other universities are saying, we'll deregister you from classes and your ID won't work and you'll be subject to punishments like you would for violating other aspects of the student code. So I think there are many, many levers, like all the things I just mentioned, the university could pretty easily do in response to non-compliance.
And as much as we love to believe the integrity of everyone, there are people that like to scam the system. It's not a secret. So do we know to what extent this policy is being mandated? What degree of religious or health reason do you need in order to be excused from this? Are there guidelines on that?
There are. For the health reason, you do have to have a letter from a medical professional detailing a specific medical reason. And so that would include things like a previous allergic reaction related to a vaccine. Now, there are a lot of medical things that are not related to vaccines that people may claim. And so I think the university is prepared to reject those, like just generally having allergies or being afraid of needles or other kinds of things. And even if you can find a doctor to attest to that, which is unlikely but possible, the university may refuse those. They have less leeway on the religious because, as a public university, questioning the content of what someone's religious belief is legally quite more difficult to do. There's no major religion that prohibits vaccination. Catholic Church supports it. Christianity, Judaism is not a tenant against vaccination. So, that's in my mind not terribly plausible. And so they've asked for an attestation. You have to promise that you have this and describe it. And they've said you could include a letter from a spiritual leader. So I think that's really interesting. What are they going to do if 20% of the students have a vaguely written religious exemption that probably, is not valid under any existing religious doctrine? I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that, but we might see some of it, and there may not be a real way to do much about that.
Exactly. I think it's a very challenging situation, but hopefully, being optimistic, we don't need to face too much of that. It has been about a week now since this policy was stated. What has the reaction been from students and faculty? Have you heard any negative backlash about it?
I have not. I've heard nothing but joyous relief. And faculty are really relieved. People in the town are relieved. Now, I don't think the university did turn out to be a great danger to the town. Back in the previous spread when no one was vaccinated, the students were spreading the disease around between each other. And at one point here in Washtenaw County, 60% of our cases were from U of M. And I think people are rightly concerned about that. Our schools are gearing up to go back. I've got an unvaccinated 9-year-old to worry about. So there are a lot of us who are just really, really relieved that there's not going to be scapegoating the university or using them as an excuse to take our kids out of school, but also that they genuinely will not be driving disease in our community, because we've got pretty low rates now, but at least last year everyone was really holding their breath when the students returned, and I think it's just an enormous weight of relief that's going to be there for everyone.
For sure. And I think there are so many people, like you said, that feel this as a weight of relief, and that's mostly what we're hearing. But of course, not necessarily just with this new University of Michigan policy, but there are a lot of people in this country that are still very hesitant about getting the vaccine for a variety of reasons. So I want to talk a little bit about these hesitancies. And one of the biggest ones is people say, well, this vaccine was rushed. Can you talk about that a little bit and address why some people may feel that way, and if not, those concerns are valid?
Well, certainly the observation that this vaccine came out extremely quickly is right. I mean, I wish they had not named it Operation Warp Speed. Of course, that's great to say how fast it's coming out, but that's obviously going to raise concerns. Did you skip any corners? Now, and people need to understand, you do have to get a little bit into the science, but it's not that hard to understand. And there's plenty of websites and Twitter feeds and great infographics, explaining how the technology, it's quite remarkable biotechnology that's been worked on for years and years. People knew quite a bit about coronaviruses generally, and the mRNA technology was available, and the way it came together, it's a quite remarkable story, easily understood by the average person. So I would encourage folks to go and read a little bit about how it was able to be developed so quickly. And we could have done developed our other vaccines a lot quicker. There's just vaccine development is often not a high priority, and we don't put a whole lot of effort behind it. And here we saw what happens when you put a tremendous amount of money and effort into doing something quickly and safely, and it's a remarkable achievement, what we've done. So I can totally see that is something to ask about and wonder about, but there's a lot of information out there, and I would folks should seek that out and try to understand. It's not that hard to understand, and there's some great stories about the individuals behind it and how they worked and how this impacted their career. USA Today had a great article. Mainstream press things are doing a pretty good job of explaining this for ordinary people to understand.
Yeah. So for people who are in their 20s, college age, which this is primarily affecting at the University of Michigan, even though it does apply to staff as well who might be a little bit older than their 20s, there is the perspective for younger people of, okay, well, most likely I'm not going to have super serious side effects from COVID. Maybe they already had COVID, and then they think, okay, well, what if this vaccine has long-term side effects potentially that could be worse than me having COVID? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, there's not evidence of that. And, COVID can be serious in younger adults. It's true that that's less likely. They can spread it though. And they will spread it. Like I said, it's a communal living environment. And even if they already had it back in the spring or back in the winter, we don't know how long that natural immunity lasts. We know it's not nearly as strong as vaccine acquired immunity. And, folks are saying it probably wears off within 6 months. Reinfection has been reported within 1 or 2 months. So I think if we did not have this and we all got back together, when winter comes and we're all closed up together again, and a lot of folks don't feel like wearing masks anymore, I think we would see a lot of spread in this group. And, and actually some of our staff categories are pretty highly unvaccinated, actually. So, I mean, the students they've been great. They have reported they have a higher vaccination rate already than Washtenaw County generally. So, it's actually some of the staff categories that are quite unvaccinated. And I think they live here in the community with us, of course. They're our community, and I think it's really going to boost levels in parts of our community that are not as highly vaccinated.
It's interesting you bring that up because I actually have right in front of me the original article from the University of Michigan when this announcement came out about the mandate to be vaccinated. And it says that as of July 30th, 81% of students and 65% of employees on the Ann Arbor campus have been vaccinated. So 81% of students and 65% of employees, that is a big difference, that 16% more of students are vaccinated. And I find that extremely surprising because I would think that it would be the other way around. So I know you said you haven't seen a lot of people who have been upset since this policy was released, but there is 35% of staff who have not been vaccinated. So have you heard from any of your colleagues that maybe aren't vaccinated and why that is the case? Like, do you have any understanding as to why it might be that there is 16% more students than staff vaccinated?
I don't know. My main appointment is in women's and gender studies. Everyone I know is vaccinated. We all ran to get vaccinated absolutely as fast as we could. I'm a Michigan girl, right? I went to Ohio to get the vaccine as quickly as I could when they opened it up to the under 50s. So I think all of us very enthusiastic. I don't know anyone that I work with who's not vaccinated, honestly. But I think the folks who work in facilities have a very low vaccination rate, and that's just a different group of people reflective of national trends of who is and isn't vaccinated. So, I am seeing only a very particular part of things now. And I just want to shout out to our students, because I know sometimes the students get scapegoated and it's not fair. And I always thought that was unfair all last year. Our students, they're killing it. They're doing great. They're getting vaccinated. And I think a lot of them probably, international students still haven't been able to get vaccinated. They're going to do it. So I think it's an amazing number from our students, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree that that's a fantastic number. I was very pleasantly surprised when I saw that. But what I'm wondering now is, we did discuss what the potential consequences are going to be if students aren't vaccinated and not being able to come back to campus. But what about the employees? Are those professors not going to be able to teach in person, or has there been discussion of what'll happen then? Will the students then have to suffer if, I don't want to use the word suffer actually, but will they be penalized and have to have online instruction? Do employees have the ability to just say, well, I'm not going to get vaccinated, so I'm just going to teach remotely, or how's that going to work?
I have not. We were told that the expectation was that we would teach in person. I suspect the number of faculty who are not going to get vaccinated is infinitesimally small. I think it would be other staff, and other, smatterings of other groups around campus. And I think it will depend on the legal status of, are they at-will employees? Are they unionized? Are they tenured? We have a lot of different hierarchies among our employment relationships with the university. I would imagine at some point there will be some who will be faced with a decision of, do they want to work at this university or do they want to get a vaccine? And I sincerely hope they make the right decision and go ahead and get vaccinated. But they're going to have to be an array of different consequences depending on the work status, depending on the person's employment relationship.
Yeah. And I try really, really hard throughout this whole thing. I've tried to stay optimistic and know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And with the vaccines and these good numbers we're seeing, we're getting through this. But also, the Delta variant is a real threat. So I hate to ask this because I don't want to think about bad things happening going into a new school year. But what are your biggest concerns as a professor and as a medical expert about what the threat that the Delta variant poses to this upcoming school year?
I think the vaccine is great protection, and it's great protection against both transmitting it and getting seriously ill. My concern is that we'll still have disease transmission even among people who are vaccinated. That seems to be much, much less likely, but that could still be a possibility. I think generally this is gonna be with us. This disease is not going away. There's plenty of other coronaviruses that have, that are all out there. This is not going to be something that we're just going to be able to beat back. Now, that being said, we're in the situation we are in with still widespread disease transmission because people are not vaccinating. And the big question is, who's going to bear the burdens of a society with an ongoing pandemic, vaccinated people or unvaccinated people? And I think, especially as soon as this vaccine gets full FDA approval, you're going to start to see a lot more mandates from private businesses and maybe other universities and other settings where folks are going to make the decision that the vaccinated should no longer bear these burdens, and that if you want to get on a domestic flight, you're going to have a vaccine. I really hope that we go in that direction in some of these contexts. And I think after you get full FDA approval, which should be coming fairly soon, I think we're going to see a lot more mandates in specific settings like that.
I agree completely. And these are difficult conversations to have always. People have a lot of tough decisions to make. So this is definitely going to be an ongoing conversation. And like you said, with such big universities like the University of Michigan, Michigan State, and so many other universities nationwide doing this, I'm sure more and more universities are going to be following in their footsteps. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But is there anything else you want to share about this new policy or the new school year before we have to let you go?
The last thought I have is a bit more sociological, and folks have been pointing out that, when everyone says within their community, I'm not getting this vaccine, then they've staked a claim about something, about their identity in their community, and it's hard to back down. And what we need to be supplying is ways for people to back down and graciously change their mind and find a reason to go ahead and get vaccinated if they're thinking about it. And I think the full FDA approval and some mandates, I think a domestic flight travel mandate would be fantastic for this, where people can say, hey, look, I thought this was kind of bunk, but I'd really like to see mom at Thanksgiving, so I went ahead and did it. They need something to say, they need a reason to change their minds. And, people make decisions within their communities in contexts that are meaningful to them. And, mandates work. They do provide that nudge and provide that reason to change your mind. And most people are not adamantly anti-vaccine. Most people have been hesitating, and they will change their minds, many of them, if given a good reason.
Well, Dr. Kirkland, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us, sharing your opinion and giving us insight on this new policy. Good luck with the upcoming school year, and let's just hope that these numbers stay, I don't want to say positive, but the numbers stay up among vaccinated individuals. So thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erica.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then be joined by Dr. Tawil, who is our final guest on this morning's Megacast.
To Sophia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
Great to have you with us here on the Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Megacast. I will say that Geico commercial with the camel, no, it's not Hump Day. It's Wine Wednesday. That's what me and my girlfriends are always going for. Hey, Dr. Tawil, we're excited to have you on because I have a lot of things to ask you about because, but before we get there, wine is good for you, right?
Wine is good for you in moderation, always in moderation. And no, I don't mean you're like, okay, 1 glass a day. And then you say, well, I'm drinking for the next 8 days right now. You don't want to do that. Just a little, everything in moderation.
I will say when we would come back from France, because it was like wine was actually cheaper than soda.
Oh gosh,
it's crazy. Like you could buy a bottle of wine cheaper than.
I remember I went to Napa years ago, and they, you go to 7-Eleven, and they'd be like, "Welcome to 7-Eleven Estates," and they're trying to like get you to drink wine everywhere.
Well, I would love to do that, but our trip to Italy was canceled. because of COVID. And so we haven't been able to make it back. But the lucky thing is my sister's place in France hasn't sold yet. So we're still going back there.
Well, I wish you the best. And if you need an extra physician to just kind of tag along, I would be happy to join you. That's all.
Hey, so, but we're kind of having you on the show because, as many people know, I'm leaving the show. But I was a cable commissioner. I'm a Kiko Harbor, so I'll fill in when they need me here and there. But I'm kind of starting my own thing. But before we even announce any of that, but every time we have you on, it's like, I'm like, how can you have them on again? You know why you can have them on again? Because the news changes every single day. I am still so confused. I know my husband's work announced today that they have to start wearing masks again, whether they're vaccinated or not. The Big Three has announced that he's covering the NFL. And even though he is vaccinated, he still has to do a test, a COVID test every week or two. And he's on the sidelines. And I'm like, no, I wash my mask and I put them away. I don't want to bring them out again. Is this just going to be our future for a while?
I think so. I do. I think that masks, I personally felt that masks were going to be something that people were just going to start doing a little bit more. You know, you see that in other parts of the world where people wear masks. You know, a lot of them do it for smog reasons, et cetera. But I think just given everything that's gone on, certain people are just definitely, they're leery and they don't want to go through this anymore. So I think they're trying their best to do what they can. And I think that's commendable and certainly their decision to do. But I do think masks are, you know, as this continues, which is unfortunate. And unfortunately, again, the reason it continues is because here and in parts of the world, it's still able to spread. So until we can get a really good lid on this, I don't think we're going to go all the way back to, you know, closing the world down like we did. And thank God we won't. But, you know, I think there's going to always be some precautions that we're going to need to take. I think this is a I don't know the words I would use, but just a big wake up call for the nation, I guess.
But Dr. Twill, if I can ask you, because so much focus has been on that 70% benchmark, and the U.S. made that. We reached that benchmark this week, even though it's late. So why is all of this happening? Is it because of the variant, the Delta variant?
I think that's a part of it. And I also think that 70% is among people who can be vaccinated. Now, I would double check my numbers on this, but, you know, 70% of those who are eligible for vaccination versus 70% of the population as a whole. So, and yes, the Delta variant certainly plays a huge role in this because, you know, we're finding out now that the Delta variant is still affecting people even if they've been vaccinated. Make no mistake, just because you've been vaccinated does not mean you are completely immune from catching COVID. The vaccines will really help to prevent you from dying of COVID. And that's kind of the goal we're after. So I want to make sure that I reiterate that the vaccine will save you. You know, I don't want you to feel that I don't want people to feel that they can get the vaccine and then they're just invincible, which is why now the CDC has changed their guidelines, suggesting that in really high risk areas, certain parts of the country that are really, really going up there, even if you've been vaccinated, it's encouraged to wear a mask.
So if I can ask you, because we had the headline today that Michigan has the 5th highest child COVID cases in the country, but the kids can't be vaccinated.
No, not yet.
So what is a parent to do?
Parents to do the best that they can to prevent the kids from getting COVID through means that are unfortunately not, you know, unfortunately they're not able to get vaccinated, but fortunately they're able to do other things, you know, social distancing, hand washing, the same stuff I've been saying since day one, wearing a mask. You know, I don't necessarily know if they're going to close down, you know, schools to that degree, but I have a feeling that we're going to start to have those scenarios where, you know, we're going to get positive cases in schools and they're going to be suspending classes for periods of time. And, you know, it's going to be a bit of a mess, but I think that we just continue to make sure the parents are vaccinated so it's not catching, you know, so kids aren't bringing it home to their families and causing bigger issues. And eventually, once the FDA gets the approval and the studies show that it's going to be safer for kids, I think they'll be able to do that, and God willing.
And I was like, can we kind of piggyback on that? Because we do know that Pfizer looks like it's probably just weeks from getting the FDA approval. How do you think that's going to change when it comes to some of these mandates?
I think it will be, as the person that was previously interviewed said, I think that will allow people to be a little bit more, you know, it better suited to mandate things. And I know that if it becomes FDA approved, then I know private offices such as mine will be able to get the vaccine so that I can give it to patients. So I think distribution will be definitely a lot easier for people. I also feel that it will also be, again, for issues with mandating, military, et cetera, I think it's going to be a little bit better. And I think it will also help kind of quell a lot of the ambivalence that people have towards the vaccines, because I know people are still concerned. People are always going to be concerned. They're worried, what are the long-term effects of the vaccine? Well, we may not know them completely. We've done studies to give us a good idea, but also let's not forget, we don't know the long-term effects of COVID. I still have patients that have had COVID well over 6 to 8 months ago, still dealing with a lot of those problems. And so I think that in the long term, I think we just need to take the option that's going to be a little bit better for not only the patient, but also for all of the patients. So
I will say, I've had friends that have had COVID and 6-8 months later, they still can't smell food. And I'm like, why can't that happen to me? Maybe I won't want to eat so much.
Yeah,
is that wrong? I'm sorry, but I know every chick is thinking that.
It could be a good thing though, because some people just really don't like being in those masks, like sneezing in those masks. It's like a whole experience. Oh my gosh. But it also, I have a lot of patients that's, the understanding was that this loss of sense of smell and taste could last for about 6 to 8 months. And I got people beyond that are still having those issues. So we're, again, still finding things out, which is unfortunate, but we're doing the best we can.
Dr. Jamie Tawil with us here on the Megacast, internal medicine specialist for the Grand River Medical Associates. And doctor, can I ask you, when we're talking about the vaccine, because I had the J&J, and I had the J&J because it was a one shot. I specifically went for the J&J because of that. I don't like needles. I'm a wuss. I admit. But now they're saying maybe people who had the J&J should get a second shot of the Pfizer or the Moderna. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not quite sure because I don't have a lot of studies that I'm looking at that are going to tell me one way or the other. And everything I do is based on studies that I'm able to read and tell people. Evidence-based medicine. I'm not just guessing at these things, and most of the physicians aren't. So I think that it would. If I had to go based on feeling, I felt that something like that was going to happen. I have a feeling that there's going to be boosters for all vaccines. Unfortunately, I know the J&J was an excellent option because A, it didn't have to be refrigerated. B, it was one dose. Now, if you look at that, I got the Pfizer vaccine. I had to get the first dose. I had to wait 2 more weeks, get the second, or 3 weeks, sorry, get the second dose, and then wait another couple more weeks for that immunity to kick in. And that was a long time, and no one wanted to wait that long, specifically in the middle of this nightmare that we were dealing with. So I don't think it's I didn't think it was a unwise decision to go for the J&J. And yeah, one less shot in the arm, one less week of being sore is definitely an option to take. The side effects of J&J have been reported, but it looks like we might find that there's less of an immunity, and hopefully, if that's the case, we can just do a quick booster to get people where they need to be.
So, but with the booster, will the booster be from J&J, or is it going to be a booster from Pfizer or Moderna? And we just don't know.
I imagine it's going to be from J&J. And the reason I suggest that is because I don't think a corporation, you got to start looking at the business aspect of this.
Yes.
If there are side effects or if there are problems, now you're mixing 2 different companies and now you don't know where the problem lies. And I think that really confounds things a little bit. I did have one patient who got the Pfizer shot and then went in for her boost, or, went in for the second shot and got a Moderna second shot. I don't know how that even happened, but that unfortunately did, and that should not have. But I do think that once if a booster is required, it'll likely be from J&J, just to be able to minimize, confusion with regards to any effects.
So while we're talking about vaccines, it just seems so crazy because it seems like the entire world has forgotten about all the vaccines that we have gotten from the previous years. So much focuses on COVID-19, but we are going into a new school year. Are you seeing that some of the kids or their families don't want to get them vaccinated, or are they behind on the vaccinations, or do they want to get vaccinated in the other areas other than COVID-19?
Well, I do internal medicine, and that's typically 18 and above. So I don't see a lot of kids, but I do talk to a lot of parents. I know that I deal with elderly essentially. And a lot of those people really wanted to be able to get all of their vaccines. I'll tell you this, flu vaccines went off the charts this year.
Really?
Everybody wanted a flu vaccine. So I ran out relatively quick. We had to keep reordering and keep them coming. And I think that's going to be the case for next year as well, because the flu vaccine, everybody knows. And I think if you're going to be able to try and reduce any risk whatsoever, I don't feel like it's going to be a huge issue. I think all of that, I don't know what word to use, I apologize, I'm nervous. But I think all of that hesitancy that people have will ultimately be, and ultimately is towards the COVID vaccine. And that's simply just because of the way it was distributed and rolled out. I mean, it all happened so fast. You know, we were basically waiting at the door for the guy to come out of the door with the vaccine, and then we grabbed it and ran. And that really didn't sit well with a lot of people. And I have a few patients that are very anxious that they're even starting to mandate that. I know healthcare systems, certain ones are starting to mandate vaccinations with their employees. And I have a few patients that are employees that are not feeling good about this. So, you know, it's understandable.
Say though, what's surprising to me is the people that work in healthcare, especially the ones that have been on the front lines of COVID-19, that don't want to get the vaccine.
That shocks me as well. I wish I could give you a good answer for that, but you know, vaccines are unfortunately getting a bad rap. And I think if they just looked at the studies and were able to just get a little bit, you know, my job is not to, you know, give orders, it's to make recommendations. So when patients come to me and ask my opinion, I'm doing just what I'm doing right now. I'm telling you that I feel it's a good idea based on the studies I've read. I feel the side effect profile is low. I feel the long-term effects are negligible, if at all, and we still don't know about them. And I feel that it is definitely the better option, whether or not it's get COVID or get a vaccine. I will choose the vaccine every time. Now, am I going to demand that and belittle you and punish you if you don't want to do that? No, it's a personal decision. You are entitled to make those. I do feel that certain employees, however, are going to have the right to say, look, if you're going to work here, we need to mitigate risk, and this is how we're going to do it. And if you don't like it, you know, that's understandable. It's your decision, but I can't have you working here. I think that's going to happen. And I think that's, you know, their right as businesses, free market. But the rise of healthcare employees and frontline workers who were very, very against the vaccine still is a mystery to me. And, you know, again, it's their decision, and I don't fault them for it. They're able to do what they want. I just hope that, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just hope that people just take the time to really read and educate themselves and not go on hearsay. You're always going to hear something about something. You know, I read this or I heard that. I have patients all day long that I heard that it does this. And it's like, well, I've heard that too, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I want you to be able to just read reputable studies and reputable sources that have actual data and numbers that are verified, as opposed to just these random things that are coming out, you know? So that's all. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, there are some crazy things though when you go on social media. And I will say I have people close to me that are on both sides of the aisle that refuse to get vaccinated, and others that were like lining up first of the day. So you're trying to navigate this world, and not only like from you as a physician, but for us as a community and as, you know, family members and this, that, and the other. It's crazy. But how do you think this is going to impact the vaccinations for kids, the regular vaccinations going into the new school year?
Well, I feel that there's always been a rise in the last, you know, 10, 20 years. There's been a slow rise in hesitancy for vaccinations for their kids. I've said this before, that I feel that it might be due to the preservatives, because if you look at a lot of those people that had a lot of hesitancy to vaccines, a lot of it was due to like the additives and the preservatives, not the vaccine itself, but just how it was processed and produced. So I think that will always be there. I don't think there's going to be an increase in hesitance. I personally don't feel that there'll be an increase in hesitancy for the newer, you know, for vaccines as parents are trying to get their kids vaccinated. I feel that the number of hesitancy rates will stay the same, but that's just an opinion based on my thoughts. I think the COVID vaccine, once we start to realize, is actually really helping and saving lives, and people are doing better when they get the vaccine, I think that will be proof positive that that's all that people need. And hopefully that will be the case.
Okay, I'm shallow. The reason why I got it is, number one, I kind of felt like you were pressured into getting it, but I was tired of wearing a mask because it messed up my makeup. My lipstick was always, smudged. When it came out, I'm a check. But I will say, Dr. Tawil, we always appreciate having you on with us. And I will, we have like 30 seconds left. I'm doing CBD freeze on my back. My back sees up. I'm getting old. I can't move anymore. It is horrible. I'm doing that with muscle relaxers and Motrin.
Oh, good Lord. And physical therapy. Here, I want to just kind of give you a quick little thing on that. A lot of people think that, I always say, never trust a physician that tells you they cannot do anything for you, and never trust a physician that tells you they can do everything for you. Those are the two big cautions. I feel that what I do, which is medicines, is a small spoke and a rather big wheel. So if you have issues with your back, I think that chiropractic medicine is definitely warranted in certain situations. I feel that physical therapy is definitely warranted in certain situations. Mind, body, spirit, losing weight, getting a healthier lifestyle, in addition to medications, in addition to, I don't want, there's no hard and fast rule that says you have to do one thing. And although I don't have a lot of data on CBD, I do have a lot of anecdotal evidence from patients that use it, and they swear by it. So I think if it works for them, I don't care if you have to do a rain dance in order to feel better. I just want results. I don't care how we get there.
I like the way you think. And thank you for always taking time to be with us here on the Megacast. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and I'm going to miss you. And I'm always available. So if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. I need a new primary care doctor. You may be Dr. Jamie Tawil, internal medicine specialist over at Grand River Medical Associates. Thank you again for everyone for tuning in to the Wednesday edition of the Megacast.
Be well.